that it is 10 a.m. So thank you very much for all of you that have joined in. What we're going to be doing today is looking at a very clever little embroidery project, and that is how to embroider 4 napkins in one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch the camera around. Hi, I'm Liz Thompson. I'm the National Education Manager for Janome Canada. So I have a team of educators and artisans. Our artisans are people who are experts in their field of sewing, and they offer us content for our Janome Life blog, and they assist us with various projects. And then of course I have a team of educators who also work together with me, and we have an incredible amount of fun. Okay, now I just wanted to mention one thing about the weather. I know we always talk lots about the weather, and I don't want to waste time doing that today, but for those of you that have got snow or cold weather, you can feel happy that today in Vancouver I have the lights on because it is so grey and miserable outside, and it rained a good deal of yesterday. So that, if that makes you feel happy, it's not sunny every day in Vancouver, as we well know. All right, so without any further ado, let's continue. I happen to be sewing on the Janome 15,000 embroidery and sewing machine today, but I do want to make it very, very clear at the outset that that just happens to be the only embroidery machine I have here at home with me. I love it. I totally am sold on the 15,000, and I would be very upset if they decided to take it back from me and switch it for something else. But this project that I'm going to show you today can be done on any of our Janome embroidery machines. If you have a hoop that is about this size, this happens to be the SQ14 hoop for the Janome 15,000, and it is about 4.5–5 inches square, and it's actually 14 centimeters square, but here in North America we pretty much do everything in imperial, in inches. So if you have a hoop that is that size or slightly smaller even, you can do this project. So don't fret, don't think you've just got to click off now and not watch. You can do this project as well. You don't have to have a 15,000 in order to do it. Obviously, the smaller the hoop you use, the less stabilizer you are using. So if you look here, and I'm going to hold it back so that you can see it, I have the SQ23 hoop hooped up, and that is 23 centimeters square, or 9 inches square, 9.1 inches I think it is. So you can see that I obviously will have used a lot more stabilizer on the SQ23 hoop than I will have on the SQ14 hoop. So if you are trying to conserve stabilizer, go for a smaller hoop. There's no problem with that. I just happen to prefer a bigger hoop because I just find it a little easier and I'm not cramped. You will notice that what I have done, so what we'll talk about now is the stabilizer. If you are doing an embroidery design, you do not want afterwards on a table napkin, which is the project we're making today, you really don't want to be picking out little bits of stabilizer. And I'm going to find my little project piece. Here it is. This is the design that I chose to do on this little project. It is a little red work flower pot, and we'll talk about where to find that in a moment, but it doesn't matter if you don't have that design on your machine. You can use pretty much most designs will work. So obviously, if you look at this design, you will see that there's lots of little spaces in between the red work stitching, and I for one would have been very unhappy to have to sit. That's actually the right side and that is the wrong side, and we'll talk about that later on, that they're almost the same. I would not have been happy to pick little pieces of tear away stabilizer out of those areas between the stitching. So my recommendation is to use a water soluble stabilizer in your hoop. That way, after we have finished the project, you can just go and rinse the napkin in a sink of water, and all that stabilizer will just wash away, and that is just so much easier. You will notice as well that I have the magnets that come with this hoop. If your hoop has magnets, please use them. I've got all 4 magnets on this hoop. And you will also notice that I took a blue wash away marker, although it could be a ball pen because this is all just going to wash away. It doesn't really matter. I used a blue wash away marker to mark the horizontal and the vertical halfway mark, center of the hoop. So that then becomes the exact center of my hooping. And you'll see in a moment why it was important that we had that marking. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the size of the design. I picked this design, which happens to be one of the designs that you will find on the Janome 15,000. It may well be on some of the other machines, like possibly the 12,000. I don't remember, but the Memory Craft 12,000 may have it, and some of our other embroidery machines that have got redwork designs may have it. I picked this one. It is in the free arm hoop category of the machine, and we'll see that just now when I go there to pick the design. You'll see where it is. But as I said earlier, if you don't have this design, I am sure you have got a myriad of other designs that will be suitable. Now remember that we are making table napkins. We are not embroidering a 10-inch quilt block or a 9-inch quilt block. So the design does really need to be fairly small. You want it down in one corner of your napkin. Well, that's kind of where I wanted it to be. You may want to put it somewhere else. So this is another design that you could possibly do, and I have not ended off all of my napkins. I'm holding all 4 of them up, but that one has been ended off. You can see that with a rolled hem on my serger, and that is another design that is built into the free arm hoop section of the 15,000, and it may well be on your machine or a similar design. And then another design that I chose was this one here, and let's do it, let's lift it up so that it's not upside down. Okay, do you see that that is a monogram? So you might want to monogram your napkins, and I chose to use the T for Thompson, Liz Thompson, and I used a silver Madeira metallic thread, and I used one of the cross-stitch monograms, which also happened to be in the free arm section of the Janome 15,000. But there are many, many monograms, and if you've been following along with the free trial that we had on offer until last Friday the 15th, to get a code to try out the Artistic Digitizer for free, you could actually digitize your own design or own monogram. That free offer to get your code is now no longer available, but the access to the software is still available until the 31st of May. And so please don't come crying on the 1st of June or the 2nd of June and say, oh, but I hadn't finished playing with my software. Get playing now. We've been doing a whole lot of posts on Janome Life with information that we got from Anne Hine, who is the software specialist at Janome America, and we've been reproducing that and putting it on Janome Life blog. And Anne also has a Facebook group called Artistic Digitizer that you can go, and she's got tons of information there. People asking questions and she answers, and she does videos. So there's loads and loads of support that you can get to practice and play with the software before it runs out on the 31st of May, which is not long from now. So kind of put your skates on and get playing. All right, so that's the size of the design. It needs to be relatively small unless you intend for a large part of your napkin to actually be embroidered, which I don't think is really suitable. All right, the next thing is your thread choice. Now I'm just going to get some spools of thread here. The thread that I used for this project and have threaded up on the machine is the Madeira Poly Neon, and because the camera is turned around so that you can see me instead of the machine, that's why this writing is back to front. But don't worry, it's not back to front on the spool. And we happen to distribute Madeira thread through our dealers, our Janome and our Elna dealers in Canada. So you're very welcome to contact any of them and ask them about it. We also have Janome thread, which is a polyester embroidery thread. And we also, excuse me, distribute Helos Iris ultra bright polyester thread. So there are 3 different choices, and you may have other embroidery threads at home that you want to use. Please feel free to go ahead. I just wanted to give one little piece of advice, is that if you are using a rayon embroidery thread, which has got quite a high luster, just bear in mind that if somebody wipes their sticky fingers at your dinner table, once we can start entertaining again and having people visit us for a meal, if they wipe their sticky fingers on your napkins and they get stained and you need to perhaps bleach them, well, you're going to lose the color of your embroidery design, because rayon is not color fast. Whereas the threads, the 3 threads that I've just shown you, are all polyester embroidery thread, and they are color fast. So you can happily bleach or use OxyClean or something like that to get stains out of your napkins. The other thing I do like about polyester embroidery thread is that it's strong, whereas your rayon thread is a lot more delicate, and so I find I get a lot less thread breakage with polyester embroidery thread. Now, I am going to tell you something that I said I would mention later in the presentation, and we're back to that now, is that if you look at this, and let me get it fairly close, that is the front of the embroidery design, and that is the back. Can you see that it is almost the same? It's almost as good on the back. I would say like 99% as good on the back as it is on the front, and that is because I wound a bobbin with exactly the same red Madeira polyneon thread that I have in the needle. So it doesn't matter if your embroidery design is, let's say, like that with more than one color. There are 3 colors in this one, orange, yellow, and green. So in this particular instance, I would have wound 3 different bobbins, an orange one, a yellow one, and a green one. And each time the machine asked me to change colors, I would have swapped the bobbin as well. And that way you can get a fully reversible embroidery design. And that's probably what you want on tablecloths and table napkins. Anything where somebody may turn it over and look at the back, you do want the back to be as pretty as the front. You don't want people to be thinking, oh, gee, she's really messy with her work. All right. The other thing is that your embroidery will be reversible, and you can then use it kind of on both sides if you wish. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is needles. Okay, so what we have here, and again, let me do it on the front. Let me put it by the camera. What I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to flip the camera, so you really don't need to see my face anymore, and that way we can have the writing the right way up. Okay, so you will see here that I'm holding up the red tip needles. Now, I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time today talking about red tip needles and purple tip needles. Let's just get the focus right. Okay, purple tip needles and blue tip needles. Okay, those are all sold through our dealers in Canada, and we have lots and lots of information about needles on Janome Life blog. So if you want to get more information about what needles are used for what, I'm just going to talk about the ones that I'm using today, which happens to be the red tip needles. Please go to Janome Life. You can either go to janome.ca and click our blog tab, and then you've got access to both the English Janome Life or the French V Janome. or you can just go janomelife.wordpress.com and it will get you to our blog. And then on the right hand side of the screen you'll see a search box, and you can just put in there red tip needles or purple tip needles or whatever it is you want to get information about. And why am I using a red tip needle? Well, the red tip needle, and you might be able to see it if I can hold my hand steady enough. Yes, can you see that it has quite a large eye? Our needles are made for us by Organ, so they are very good quality, and the red tip needles are sharps. In other words, they don't have a ball point. They will pierce your fabric and your stabilizer and do a really good job of embroidery. And with the large eye, it means you get less thread breakage because that thread is not rubbing against the eye of the needle. They are size 14 needles, which you may have seen on the box, size 14, which means they're a fair size. They're on the slightly larger size needle, so they're just perfect for embroidery, and that's what I tend to use an awful lot of the time. Now let's talk about bobbin cases. If you have a fairly recent Janome embroidery machine, you will know that you got 2 embroidery bobbin cases with your machine. You got, first of all, in the machine, you got the regular red bobbin case. And again, if I can keep my hand still enough, I'm sort of like dangling it in the air here. Do you see that red marking? Okay, on the bobbin case. Let's just see if I can get the focus right. Okay, that is the bobbin case that is for regular sewing. And that is packed in the machine when it comes to you. And then you also would have got a bobbin case with a yellow dot on it. And that yellow dot is a higher tension. In other words, it holds the bobbin thread tighter down below the needle plate than the other bobbin case, the red one that I've just shown you. And when you are doing embroidery, you are going to use the yellow dot bobbin case for embroidery. I've just been asked a question, can you use the red tip for general sewing? Absolutely. It is in essence a universal needle with a sharp point and a big eye, so you can use it. I use red tips almost exclusively. Sometimes I will dig out the purple tips when I'm having trouble with skipped stitches, or I have something particularly dense, like a very densely digitized embroidery. I'll pop a purple tip needle in and it gives me better results. But you'll get all that information on Janome Life. There is another bobbin case that I'm not going to talk about today because we're not doing anything with that today, but that is the bobbin case with a little blue marking. Can you see that over there? The blue marking, and that is the exact opposite of a yellow dot. That is a lower tension than the red one, and you would be using that for hand look quilting. So in other words, when you use that stitch and sewing where you put invisible thread in the needle, or you would be using it for free motion and ruler quilting. Ruler quilting is of course free motion quilting, and you would use it when I'm using my embroidery machine and I am quilting in the hoop or doing AccuFill quilting. That is when I would use my blue dot bobbin case, because I don't want the top thread to be pulled down to the back as it will be with the yellow dot bobbin case, which is a high tension. And the reason for the yellow dot bobbin case is so that I don't get bobbin thread creeping up to the top of the embroidery. Okay, yes, hi to quilting in Sussex, all the way from the UK. My son lives in London, so he's not far from you. All right, so that was about bobbin cases. Just a little bit on AccuFill quilting and the blue dot bobbin case. Michael, who also is here in at Janome Canada with us, Michael did a Facebook Live for Janome America yesterday, and his topic was all about AccuFill quilting, in other words, quilting in the hoop, and part of that was using the blue dot bobbin case. So if you're interested in that, go to Facebook and look for the Janome Sewing Machines page, scroll down to the videos, and you will see Michael's video there. Incidentally, it was very good. Okay, So let's see what the next topic is that I needed to mention. We've talked about stabilizer. Right, so now we are where we need to be with the project. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is getting the machine set up. And I just need to make, oh, that's pretty good. I just wanted to check the camera was picking up what we've got there. I am going to take this glue. This is the Artistic Tack Temporary Adhesive, and I'm just going to remove the hoop from the machine, and I'm going to do this off camera because I really don't want any glue sprayed anywhere near my machine. And now that I have the glue sprayed onto my stabilizer, notice that I hooped my stabilizer only. And how I have prepared my fabric is I took my, this happens to be a cotton fabric, and let me hold it a little bit further away so that you can see more of it. I have on the other projects used fabric that was a lot larger than the piece I'm showing you now. All right, this piece that I'm showing you now is only about 19 inches square. And that is because, I'm sorry, I'm running out of fabric. My stash is kind of getting a bit low when it comes to solid colors. And this is a sort of creamy off-white color, which was better for napkins than a print fabric. So on my other projects, like the one where I showed you this little flower and these ones here that I did on Facebook Live for Janome America last week, these ones, there's one there. All right, this fabric was cut much larger. So if you are wanting a sort of slightly larger napkin size, you're probably going to want to cut a large square of fabric around about, well, the cream ones with the little orange flower, that was cut at about 22 inches because I was using a cotton fabric, and that's usually about 44 inches wide. That meant I got 2 sets of napkins out of the width of fabric, which meant I ended up with 8 napkins, which is kind of a good number of napkins for entertaining. The brown napkins with the little flower pot, red flower pot, that one I actually cut at 29 inches square. Today, as I say, we're going to end up with cocktail napkins. Gee, my arms are not long enough. We're going to end up with cocktail napkins because this is only about 19 inches square. So what I did was I folded the napkin in half and pressed a seam, not a seam, sorry, pressed a fold in my fabric, a good solid fold. And then I folded it in half again. So now it's in quarters. All right, there it is in quarters. And I pressed another seam. Now you probably want to do this with the fabric wrong side out. So I just want to check that you can see what I'm doing on the screen. I think you can. And I am lining up my fabric fold with that vertical line that I marked on my water-soluble stabilizer. And then I'm going to open up my fabric, and I also want to make sure that my horizontal fold is lined up with the little markings on the hoop that show the halfway mark on the hoop. And then because I had glue on the stabilizer, I just smoothed the fabric down onto the hoop so that it is now adhered to the stabilizer. But that's not really going to cut it because I want to use the basting. So we'll get there in a moment. What I now need to do is just mention first of all that you are going to put the P embroidery foot on the machine. I still every now and again bump into somebody who has put the PDH free motion foot or darning foot on the machine when they're doing embroidery. That will bump into the side of your hoop. That is not meant to be the embroidery foot. This P embroidery foot is the correct one to use. We have a red tip needle in the machine. We've already talked about that. And I have the machine threaded up with red polyester thread in the needle and in my bobbin. So let me now move the camera to the screen of the machine, and let's bring this. a little bit closer so that you can see better what is going to be happening at the screen. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to call up our edit screen. So I touched that little piece of graph paper. Let me go back so that you can be sure that you know what I'm referring to. That little piece of graph paper, the icon that looks like graph paper, is your edit screen. So we touch that, and then you will notice that at the top it says the square 23 hoop, which is indeed the hoop that I want to use. If I was using a smaller hoop, I would touch that hoop icon over there and I would go and select a different hoop. But that's the one we want. Next thing we need to do is we need to choose our design. So I'm now going to go, if I was wanting a monogram, I would go to the ABC. But we're going to choose that little red work flower pot. So I went to the little sunflower icon, and now I'm going to choose the hoop. I could choose the flower, but I'm going to choose the hoop because I know that that red work design is under the FA10 category on the machine, and this is where you can now see the red work designs. And there is the little flower pot. It is design number 6. By the way, why polyester thread and not cotton? Well, because we're doing embroidery, we want a bit of a shine to our embroidery, but if you want a matte look, go ahead and use cotton thread. Generally, when we're doing embroidery, we use polyester or rayon threads, but you certainly can use cotton thread. What I wanted to mention as regards no, I've forgotten now what I was going to mention, so I'll remember just now probably. All right, so this design here can be moved with my stylus pen, and I am going to very first of all rotate it. So let's go back there so that you can see I'm using the thing that looks a little bit like a cyclone. All right, little arrows going in a circle, and I am going to rotate it once at 45 degrees to the right. And then what I want to do is I'm going to say, okay, because it's been rotated now. Now I want to position it so that it is 2 squares up, and I find it easier to use the jog keys when I want to get it really exact. The jog keys on my screen there. And I have positioned it 2 squares up, those little squares on the screen, and 2 squares to the right in the 1 quadrant. Basically, what's going to happen is that's 1 napkin, a 2nd napkin, a 3rd napkin, and a 4th napkin. So I have not cut my fabric at this point. It is all still 1 piece. That's why you can get 4 napkins out of 1 hooping. So how do we get that little flower pot? Well, sure, I could copy and paste it. I could go and select it again, but we have a fabulous feature on this machine, and it's on quite a few of our embroidery machines, which is called the cornering icon. And so I'm going to scroll down until I find that icon with 4 little hearts, and I am simply going to touch it, and voila, I have 4 beautiful little red work flower pots that have been mirrored and rotated and positioned exactly the same in relation to the middle. Now that darker black line vertically and horizontally on my hoop is actually where I'm going to cut those napkins apart later when the embroidery is finished. Okay, so there we have all of those. I'm not going to show you terribly many other features today because we're already 27 minutes into the presentation, so I want to sort of wrap things up fairly quickly. But there are a couple of things that I do want to still mention. This is a tip that they really loved when I did this presentation last week for Janome America on their live. I am now on the ready to sew screen because I said okay on the edit screen. The first thing I want to do is I want to touch that little icon in the middle of my jog keys, and then the crosshair pops onto the screen, and it now will show me exactly where the progress is of my embroidery because that moves as with the needle. But the first thing I want to do is I want to go to this icon on the top of the screen here, and that is the basting or the trace and baste icon. So I'm going to touch that, and I'm going to touch the first one. Your manual will tell you what all the others are. I don't want to go into all of that today. And by the way, that I've remembered, that was what I was going to do. Does the, I'll tell you before I forget, send me a message in the comments here today. Would you like to see the instructions for this on a Janome Life blog? In other words, written instructions. It's great to follow a video, but if you want written instructions, just tell me yes, and I will make sure that I do this in a Janome Life blog in sort of the next couple of weeks. Okay, so there was a question, does the yellow dot bobbin fit all Janome machines? All Janome embroidery machines, yes. Right, so I'm going to touch that icon there, which is for basting, because I want to now, it's glued to my stabilizer, but I want to make really sure that it stays in place. Now, have you ever had the problem where you start doing your basting and it doesn't pick up the bobbin thread and it trails the top thread along as it's basting? That's really annoying. So there's nothing wrong with the machine when that happens. It's just that your basting stitch is a very loose tension stitch and it is a very long stitch. So it's really hard for that bobbin thread to go all the way down through your fabric and your stabilizer to the bobbin and pick up that bobbin thread. So we give it a helping hand, and this is the tip that they loved so much last week. So what you're going to do to set the basting going, and I'm going to move this so you can see the hoop now, is I'm going to set the stop start going. Ooh, I did not attach the hoop to the machine. Let's just do that very quickly before we do anything else. Right, so you will see that I started the basting by pressing stop start, and then I immediately pressed stop start again for a second time. And now that I'm in the top corner where the basting is going to start, the top right corner, I take my needle up down and I press it once and twice and I bring up my bobbin thread. And now I hold my bobbin thread and my top thread, set the stop start button going again, and now it is in fact basting just as we want it to do, because the bobbin thread got a little bit of help at the beginning to help it to come up from the bottom. All right, and I'm just going to snip off those threads, and there we go. The basting is now almost complete, and now we are ready to do our actual flower pot embroideries. So what I do need to do, and I'll just switch it back to the screen so that you can see, is I'm going to switch off my basting function, and now we are ready to press stop start at the hoop and set it going. Now the entire length of these 4 flower pots is 6 minutes, so that is not going to take very long to stitch. So what I'm going to do is, okay, written instructions, yes please, okay, consider it done everybody. I will write this up as a blog post and you will be able to see that on Janome Life. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any content on Janome Life, if you go over to the right hand side of the screen, if you haven't already done this, there is a little block that says follow. Just click follow and it'll ask you to write in your email address. We don't send you 1,000 emails. You will just get an email every time we do a Janome Life post. And at the moment, that is every day. I skipped on Monday this week because quite frankly, I just was exhausted and I needed to take a little bit of time off on our stat holiday, Victoria Day. And so I did not do a blog post on Monday. But since I think about the 24th of March, when COVID had kind of walloped us on the side of the head, we have been doing a Janome Life post every single day, sometimes more than one a day. So every time there's a Janome Life post, you will get a notification of that in your email box. And at any time, you can unsubscribe as well if you choose to do that. So make sure that you follow us. All right, let me just check while it's continuing on doing the next flower pot. I'm going to see the video is cutting out. Is there something I can do? Unfortunately, the video cutting out is generally to do with your internet connection, and I had a huge amount of problems a couple of weeks ago And what you can do is you can go to your internet, Google page, your browser, and type in there internet speed test, and then see what your download and upload speed are and compare that to what your service provider is supposed to be providing to you. Unfortunately, with so many people being at home, a lot of our internet providers are kind of struggling to keep up with the bandwidth that's being used, and some people, depending where you are and how many people in your area are using the internet, it can be a bit problematic. But we realized I was getting around 1, and I should have been getting 15 for download. And we complained to our service provider. In all fairness to them, I won't mention who it was, and they literally fell over themselves to make it right for us, and they upgraded us to 25 for free. So you might want to look into that if you're having trouble with your internet. It's usually your internet can't keep up with downloading this video as I'm talking. Okay, let's just see any other questions that I might need to answer. No, at this point, no more questions to answer. But you're very welcome to send in questions, and I will certainly address those here in the live today, or I will address them in the Janome Life blog when I write it all up for you. In fact, it is already all written up on my little cheat sheet for this class. Okay. There are just 4,000 stitches, and can you notice as well, if we turn back to the screen, can you see the little black crosshair moving on the flower pot? It's on the 3rd flower pot now, so you get to see exactly where the progress is of your design. So I'm going to just turn it back to the hoop, and these are the little napkins that I made last week, and I cut them, and I have trimmed, I have sort of ended them off around the edge with a rolled hem on my serger. And I see actually that is the wrong side of my napkin. When I ironed them, I wasn't looking, should have put my glasses on, and yeah, this one's better. All right, so this napkin here, I did the rolled hem around the edge, simply because I found that quite easy to do. But you certainly can use the narrow hem foot, which is the D foot, D for dog, and a lot of our machines have the D foot. It's called the narrow hem foot or the rolled hem foot, and I believe that Michael over on his Instagram lives called Janome HQ, he is working steadily through the alphabet, and D was the narrow hem foot for the D foot, and I believe that he did that earlier this week. I think he did that on Monday, but have a look at his Instagram live page, Janome HQ, and you can get a lot of really good information there on the narrow hem foot. I'm not going to go into it, but that is another way that is really, really good for ending off napkins, tablecloths, skirts, scarves, any number of things where you need a very thin, narrow little hem. Okay, I want to just see if there's anything else that I need to tell you. What I am going to show you now, while it is almost coming to the end of its embroidery, is even though I had pressed this napkin, all right, can you see it? Let me just check that you can see it. Unfortunately, yeah, you can. Do you see that I had pressed it with an iron before I put it into the hoop and stitched my 4 T's? But I wasn't sure if I could see that or that you could see that clearly. So what I did was I took a fabric marker and drew in over the folds that I'd pressed. And that blue line is where you now that all 4 of my little flower pots have been stitched, that is where I am going to now cut my napkins into 4. And so I will have, in this particular case, 4 little cocktail napkins, because I am running out of fabric, and that's all I had for this project today. All right, so let me just double check that we don't have some more questions. If I missed any, I will for sure answer them later on the Janome Life blog. But I did want to also mention that I haven't got time. I'm so busy with all this online work that I just get reports from my husband of what's going on in the politics and the provincial regulations about COVID. I hear that they're starting to lift some of the restrictions. Personally, I'm not really happy to go anywhere near anywhere because I have somebody in my household that is high risk and I really cannot bring the virus home. But having said that, we certainly, our dealers are finding that they are able to lift some of the restrictions depending on what province they're in. For example, in BC, they never mandated that you could not keep your Janome dealership open. So many of our dealers did stay open, but they had a strict, one person in the store at a time, like they do at the grocery stores. And Ontario had slightly different rules. So check with your local area. But the point I'm trying to get to is call your dealer or email your dealer. They need your support. They've been working under very difficult circumstances for the last couple of months, and that we want them to still be with us in 6 months' time. So do support them. And like me, I'm now almost out of solid fabric, so I need to get to a fabric store and buy some more solid fabric so that I can carry on sewing. And so do support your local dealer. Call them, email them. Many of them will ship to you, or you can do curbside pickup, or as I say, some of them are even letting people into their stores at this stage. And also, we've got so much information online about masks. It appears to me the discussion at the moment is that once they've started lifting some of the restrictions, we are all going to have to wear masks when we leave our homes. So if you haven't been making masks and you haven't got masks, a good supply of them, you might want to get sewing now. I'm one of those people. I have to start making some masks because I'm out of the ones that I had, the disposable ones. All right, so there we are. As I say, support your local dealer. Also, go to Janome Life, go to janome.ca. There's lots of information on our website. Don't forget, if you got the code for the free trial of Artistic Digitizer, that you play with it, because you could do some really cool, totally original digitizing for your 4-in-1 napkins. I hope you enjoyed the presentation this morning. I hope it is still morning here in BC. I hope that you got some valuable, good information that you could use with your embroidery. And thank you very much for watching. I'm just going to flip this back so that you can see me and say thank you very much for watching. Bye.